I received a lot of encouragement that I needed to be really dynamic so that everybody would be able to stay awake. And I think I'll make a deal with you, though. I don't know how it's going to come out, whether it'll be dynamic or not, whether it'll keep you awake or not. But what if we quit earlier? Okay. All right. So if everybody stays awake and I don't see anybody sleeping, then we'll quit earlier. But if I see somebody going to sleep, then we'll go on the rest of the hour. I'm teasing. I'm teasing. We're going to continue looking at the subject of addictions. And we're going to focus on self-esteem. This is the connection that self-esteem has with addictions. I believe that one of the underlying issues with all addictions is shame. Shame. Shame has a powerful role in the development and the maintenance of addictions, but also in whether or not we're able to deal with the addiction and actually work toward overcoming it. Our brains are again, constantly changing throughout all of our life. And when we stop an addictive behavior, the long-term effects will be there. But what's interesting is, again, that research shows that our brain is constantly developing. And so even though the disease occurs, if we stop the behavior and if we change our environment, we change our way of thinking, we become more empowered as a person and life is less stressful for us, that we can actually make changes in our brain to where that we can overcome the addiction, overcome the addictive brain. Now, that's a controversial statement. Some people agree with it, some people don't. Some people think once you're an addict, you're always an addict and there's nothing you can do about it. But I disagree with that, especially when we're talking about the power of God being a part of that process. There's a difference that I see in guilt and shame. Guilt is when I think I'm a good person that's done something bad. Shame is when I think I'm a bad person that's bad. Guilt is when I think I'm a good person that's done something wrong. Shame is when I think I am a bad person that's done something wrong. I'd like to ask you to consider that there is no greater pain than anybody can experience in this life than the pain of shame, the pain of being a worthless human being, the pain of being a nobody. There is no greater pain than being a worthless human being. So if I think that I'm a worthless human being, that I'm not valuable, that I'm insignificant, that my life really doesn't matter that much, then I'm going to have that pain of shame. And that pain actually can contribute to the development of addiction in the sense that I want to avoid that pain. I want to get away from it. I want to escape it. But I'd like to ask you to consider that I have never seen anyone really improve in being able to truly overcome an addiction without improving their self-esteem. As long as they think they're a bad person, it's going to be very, very unlikely that they will be successful in managing the addiction and overcoming it. So today what I'd like to do is to ask you, as we begin, on a scale of 1 to 10, to rate where you would rate your self-esteem right now. On a scale of 1 to 10. 10's being the best, 1's the worst. Where would you rate your self-esteem right now? If you were to rate your self-esteem, 10's the best, 1 is the worst. Just kind of keep a hold of that number. What I hope is that as we conclude this afternoon is that you will be able to improve your number, but I would like for you, chicken, Apologies. It's good the second time too, but I'd like for you to not only be able to improve your self-esteem, but I'd like for you to be able to rate it as a 10. I'd like for you to be able to rate it as a 10. Self-esteem is how we feel about ourselves. And how we feel about ourselves is based on our self-concept, how we think about ourselves. So if I want to improve my self-esteem, I have to improve my self-concept. For example, if I think I'm stupid, I'm going to feel stupid. If I think I'm worthless, I'm going to feel worthless. If I think I'm weak, then I'm going to feel insecure and weak and fearful and anxious. So in order to improve our self-esteem, how we feel about ourselves, our value, is determined on how we think about ourselves. If I don't think I'm valuable, I'm not going to feel valuable. It's very, very unlikely that I will feel very valuable. Now, how we think about ourselves is based on our self-perception. And our self-perception comes from our reflecting ourselves into our spiritual mirror. Our spiritual mirror is what we have chosen to believe makes a person valuable. Everybody's got one. Whatever you believe makes a person valuable, that's your spiritual mirror, and you're constantly comparing yourself to that. You're reflecting yourself into that, and how you see yourself or perceive yourself then will determine how you think about yourself, which will then determine how you feel about yourself. Now, what's really important about that is like what we mentioned earlier this morning, is that Satan's a liar, and he wants us to believe that something matters, that something makes us valuable that really doesn't matter. And he's really good at what he does. He's really, really good at what he does. He wants us to feel powerless. He wants us to feel fearful. He wants us to feel helpless and hopeless. He wants to destroy us. And so, not only is he a liar and the father of all lies, he's also referred to as the prince of this world. The majority of people in the world are following after what Satan says is true. And so it's really easy for us to buy into some of Satan's lies. I think that there are, generally speaking, two mirrors that we can look into. One is Satan's mirror and the other is God's mirror. If we look into Satan's mirror, we're going to get a false idea of who we are. One thing that will happen is that we will look into our mirror and we can get this really weird reflection, but if we believe that it's true, then we can have a low self-esteem or an artificial self-esteem, but it's based on a lie. There's nothing really wrong with us. There's just something wrong with the mirror that we're looking into. Another thing that can happen is that we can reflect ourselves into Satan's mirror and have an artificial self-esteem. In other words, I think I'm valuable, I think I'm special, I think I'm worthy, I think my life has value to it, but it's based on meeting a lie of Satan. And so if you were to look at me, you would think I had a healthy self-esteem, but really it's an artificial self-esteem because it's based on the lie of Satan. Any self-esteem that's based on the lie of Satan is unhealthy. One of the ways that we can know that we have an artificial self-esteem is that it constantly goes up and down. It's variable. It varies. And if I have a healthy self-esteem, it's not that I'm going to be feeling good about myself one day and bad about myself the next day. I'm going to feel good about myself every day. I'm going to know that I'm valuable every day. That's a healthy self-esteem. But if we have an artificial self-esteem that's based on a lie, then it's going to go up and down. And we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. So God has a mirror. He says, I would like for you to choose to look into my mirror. I would like for you to choose to believe what I say makes a person valuable. Satan says, I want you to choose to believe what I say makes a person valuable. And this is the thing. We get to choose what mirror we're going to look into. Nobody makes us believe anything. That's our power. If you have a low self-esteem right now, you can change it. The reason you have a low self-esteem right now is because it's based on lies of Satan. I promise you that. If you feel good about yourself, but you're feeling good about yourself, it's not because of God. You're basing it on what Satan says makes a person valuable, what matters. That's dangerous and that's scary because it can go away. If we base our self-esteem on anything that can go away, it's very unhealthy. If we base our self-esteem on what God says makes us valuable, it will never go away and we will always have it. So what I'd like to do in the time that we have remaining is I'd like to share with you some misbeliefs that Satan promotes in the world that's easy for us to buy into. In fact, again, the world is following after what Satan says makes a person valuable. They're judging themselves by it. They're judging us by it. And they're really trying to put a lot of pressure on us to judge ourselves by it as well. So I'd like to share with you a few misbeliefs, show you how insidious they are and how believing these lies can take away our power. And then I'd like to suggest what God says is the truth about what makes us valuable. I'd like to ask you to consider that one misbelief that Satan promotes is that I'm a valuable person if I'm accepted by certain other people. I'm a valuable person if I'm accepted by certain other people. Whenever we believe that our value is based on being accepted by others, what we do is that we're giving our power to other people to determine our value as a human being. I liken it to giving them a spiritual gun. They have the power to wound our soul or to devastate us. They have that spiritual gun. Not everybody has a gun, only those that we value. People that we don't value, we don't care what they think about us. But if people that we value don't value us, or they don't respect us, or they don't think that we're a good person, or they reject us, or they abandon us, then we feel like we're messed up. Something's wrong with me. If people that I value don't value me, then that must be because something's wrong with me. So the more we value someone, the bigger gun they have. For example, a lot of times our parents, what they think, whether they value us, whether they respect us, whether they think that we're a worthwhile person or that our life matters, carries a lot of weight. A lot of people go through life thinking that they're a worthless human being because they don't think that their parents value them. Tremendously painful. It's traumatizing, actually. But it can be a spouse, it can be coworkers, it can be friends, it can be anybody. It just depends, again, on our value system. So the emotional response to this misbelief is the fear of rejection. When we believe that our value is based on being accepted by others, we have a tremendous fear of being rejected. Because if people that I value reject me, then I am a nobody. There is that shame. I am a bad person. And again, there is no greater pain than shame. I'm worthless. I'm unlovable. Something's wrong with me. There are a lot of behaviors that can develop as a result of that, and I'm going to share just a few of them. Let's say that you believe that your value is based on being accepted by others, and so they're holding a gun on you. Every time you go in around this individual or these people, your body's responding as if there is a physical gun that's being held on you. We have our autonomic nervous system. We have our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous system. Whenever we are relaxed and we don't see that there's a threat, our parasympathetic nervous system is kicked in and it controls all the systems in the body that's intended to build energy. In fact, when we're relaxed, there's no threat. Our body is working to build energy. However, anytime we perceive that there's a threat, our autonomic nervous system changes. Our parasympathetic nervous system begins to be curtailed and sometimes shut down completely. Our sympathetic nervous system kicks in. And what's interesting, our sympathetic nervous system controls all the systems in the body that's intended to use energy to deal with a threat. It's referred to as the fight or flight response, the stress response system. It happens automatically. We don't think about it. It just happens. So anytime I perceive that there's a threat, my body's going into that survival mode. Now, God made us that way. It's healthy. There's nothing wrong with it. The problem is it was intended to get us through an acute short-term emergency. But if it is kicked in over a long period of time, chronically, then all the adaptive changes become maladaptive, and we can actually develop a lot of physical problems and emotional problems and even mental problems because of that fight or flight response system being kicked in so much. For example, whenever our parasympathetic nervous system is kicked in, our stomach, our digestive system is working naturally. It's working normally, and it's digesting food, and it's functioning in a way to build energy so that we can function daily. But whenever we perceive there's a threat, our digestive system begins to shut down. It begins to shut down. And over a long period of time, it can cause all kinds of digestive problems. Stomach ulcers. It can result in irritable bowel syndrome. All kinds of problems can result if it's kicked in chronically. And so what's really important is that we recognize that if any time I go around people that I think what they think about me matters, it determines my value as a human being. It's like I'm walking into a room with somebody that's holding a gun. That's the way my body is responding. And if I'm in a room full of people, then I'm going to be really stressed out. And so if we have a job to where we have to be around people all the time, then we can just be stressed that whole time. And it can create a lot of problems. Kids that think that their value is based on being accepted by their peers, they can, a lot of things I think are misdiagnosed because I think it's mainly anxiety, but yet it's diagnosed as other things. But a lot of it is just that fear of being rejected that creates a lot of the symptoms of not being able to function, not being able to focus, not being able to remember. All of those can be anxiety issues. Another thing that can happen when we have that misbelief that our value is based on being accepted by others is we tend to be people pleasers. People pleasers. Why? Because if I'm pleasing you and I'm making you happy, then you're going to be less likely to shoot me. So we tend to be people pleasers. We have a really hard time saying no. Why? I don't want to say no and you get angry with me. And if you get angry with me and I hurt you, then because I don't do what you want me to do when you want me to do it like you want me to do it for as long as you want me to do it, then you may get angry and reject me and not want to have anything to do with me anymore. So we end up, again, that fear controls the choices in our relationships. We do things not to please God, but we're afraid of being rejected by other people. And so our choices and our decisions are fear-driven. And we make a lot of unhealthy decisions when fear is controlling the process of making those decisions. And we can do some really stupid, unhealthy things. Unhealthy in the sense that it's not good for me, but unhealthy in the sense that it's not good for others as well. I'd like to give you two illustrations right quick, relationship illustrations to illustrate that, and to show how that when we have this misbelief, how it makes us powerless and how it just builds to that sense of shame. The first is the battered wife syndrome. Let's say that there's a woman that believes that her value is based on being accepted by others. She falls in love with a man. She gives him a gun. She now needs him to accept her in order for her to feel like she's valuable. In this relationship, he's insecure and he's weak too, and in order for him to feel secure in the relationship, he's got to see himself as being better than her. So in a battered wife situation, what usually happens is that the man, once they get married, constantly is putting her down, criticizing her. She can't dress right, clean right, cook right, chew gum right, talk right, spell right. He's just constantly criticizing her, putting her down all the time, just so he can feel secure. If I'm better than you, then you're going to be more likely not to reject me. What every battered woman that I've ever worked with has told me is that sooner or later her man will tell her something like this. He will say, "You're such a sorry excuse for a human being. No other man will ever want to have anything to do with you. You're lucky that I put up with you and accept you." So once she is told that enough times, and then she starts believing it, then she has two powerful misbeliefs. I'm a valuable person if I'm accepted by others. No other man will ever want to have anything to do with me. He's the only man who will ever want to have anything to do with me. So when she believes that, then he has a cannon of a gun. She cannot dare take the risk of being rejected by him, because if he rejects her, then there is absolutely, in her mind, no hope that she will ever be valuable. And so at that point, he can begin physically abusing her, and she just takes it. He can begin verbally and emotionally abusing her, and she just takes it. He can begin sexually abusing her, and she just takes it. And people would look at her and they would think, why? Why are you so weak? Why do you stay in that? Why do you allow yourself to be abused like that? And what's interesting is that if a battered woman leaves, and what law enforcement officers tell me is that statistically, usually they have to make at least 5 domestic calls before the woman will ever leave. She won't do it on the first one. If they ever leave, there's a good possibility that... Are y'all awake? Somebody told me to do that. I did not do it on purpose, I promise. Usually she goes back. And again, why? And this is what Satan's lies do. When I believe that my value is based on being accepted by others, I'm powerless. I've chosen to give an imperfect person the power to determine whether I'm a valuable person or not. It's very unhealthy, and it causes all kinds of problems. I had many years ago a young lady that was married to a sex addict, and like most addicts, he was trying to make her responsible for his happiness. The only reason why he would use would be because he wasn't happy, and so she thought she was responsible for making him happy. And so after a while, he became bored with her, and he said, "We just need to have someone else to join us." And so he said, "Why don't you invite your girlfriend to come and have sex with us?" So she did, thinking she had to get him to keep her as his wife. And after a while of doing that with the 3 of them, after a while he said, "I think you just need to leave and go sleep with the kids, and she and I'll just stay in here." And she did. And she was powerless. And she couldn't see it. She really could not see it. And that story gets even more tragic, and I will not go into the details of it, but I just want you to know that when we believe that our value is based on being accepted by those people that we value, and because there's no greater pain than the pain of being a worthless human being, we can do all kinds of unhealthy things to avoid that kind of pain. And it's a very important reason as to why addictions develop and why they're maintained. I'd like to ask you to consider another example is of codependency. Let's say that there's a woman that believes that her value is based on being accepted by others. She falls in love with a man. She gives him her heart. He now has a gun. She needs him to accept her in order for her to feel like she's valuable. In this relationship, he's an addict. And so he needs her to take responsibility for him. And so he says, "I tell you what, I will accept you if you will take responsibility for my addiction." She says, "Sure." And so he says, "But you need to understand, I don't use unless I'm bored, unless I'm scared, unless I'm stressed, unless I'm unhappy." She says, "Okay, I'll make sure that you're happy, that you're not bored, that you're not stressed." I'll make sure that you feel secure. Now, the way that conversation goes usually is he talks to her and he says, you're such a wonderful, awesome human being. I've tried to quit using for years and years and years. I've had a lot of people to try to help me, but if anybody can help me, you can. And that makes her feel really good. And so she says, sure, I can help you. I will be the kind of woman in your life so that you will never, ever want to use again. And so they get married, and it's not long after they're married, he starts using. Now she gets a little bit anxious. She's afraid that maybe he's not happy or something, and he may reject her. So she goes to him and says, tell me what it is. I'll fix it. He says, well, okay, I'm stressed, and as you know, when I get stressed, I'm going to use. She says, tell me, I'll fix it. He says, okay, well, it's just clutter. When things are cluttered and disorganized, I get stressed. When I get stressed, I use. She says, I got it. I'll fix it. So she starts trying to keep the house exactly the way he wants her to fix it, just so that he won't be stressed and so that he won't use. She thinks, fixed it, got it. But then, not too long later, he starts using again. She goes to him and says, what is it? Tell me and I'll fix it. He says, no, I can't tell you this. She starts getting a little anxious and stressed because she doesn't want to be rejected by him. So she says, you've got to tell me. And she really, really puts a lot of emphasis on it and pushes and manipulates. And he finally says, okay, I'll tell you. But don't say I didn't tell you so. I'm not happy because of you. When we first got married, you were fine, you were toned, you were tanned. You were good looking. And I was happy being married to a woman that looked like you. But now you're getting a little fluffy. You're getting a little, F.H. Gates taught me that word many years ago. We were getting fluffy. Getting a little fluffy, getting a little ashy, getting a little wrinkled, getting a little gray. Just not as toned as you used to be. She says, I'll fix it. So she goes to the gym, starts working out every day. She starts fixing her hair and makeup the way he wants her to fix it. She goes to the tanning bed, getting toned and tanned. Plus, she tries to dress the way he wants her to dress. And because he likes her to dress a little slutty, she'll even dress slutty for him. Plus, she continues to try to keep the house exactly the way he wants to keep it. Again, she's very productive. She can do a lot. And so she thinks, fixed it. And so she begins to relax. But then, it's not long afterward, he begins using again. She says, tell me, what is it? He says, well, it's the children. She says, I got it. So she starts taking care of all their health care needs, all their school activities, all the church activities. He doesn't have to do anything. Even when he comes home from work, she makes sure that the kids are out of his hair so that they don't stress him and so he doesn't use. And she continues to try to look the way he wants her to look and keep the house the way he wants her to keep it. She's able to do it, but it's starting to get a whole lot more stressful now. Her anxiety level goes up. But she's making it. And she thinks she's got it made. But then, of course, he keeps using. And she says, what is it? Tell me, I'll fix it. He says, well, it's just the financial stress that we're under. She says, I got it. So she goes out, gets a job working 40 hours a week. Plus she keeps taking care of all the children and all their needs. He doesn't have to do a thing. Plus she keeps trying to look the way he wants her to look and keep the house and everything the way he wants her to keep it. Now it is physically impossible for her to do all of that. She starts getting exhausted physically. When her physical energy level goes down, her emotional and mental level goes down too because her brain's connected to her body. Finally, she just feels like she's going to collapse. But in the middle of all of this, he's using more and more and more, and it's her fault. You're not keeping this clean enough. You're not keeping the children from stressing me out. You're not making enough, or you're spending too much. Or I don't like the way that your clothes are fitting you anymore. And he uses that. He's angry at her. It's your fault, your fault. And she feels like it's her fault. Finally, she does collapse. He comes up to her and says, I want a divorce. It's because of you. You failed. You're a terrible wife. You didn't do what you said you were going to do. So he divorces her and goes out and finds another woman who's willing to take responsibility for him. For him. So on the outside, you would look at that woman and you would think, wow, she is so unselfish. She is such a loving, godly Christian woman that's sacrificing everything for her man. But that would not be true. Because she is very, very, very selfish. You see, we can do the right thing, but if it's out of the wrong motive, it's not going to be healthy. So she's doing a lot of good things for her husband, but she's doing it out of the wrong motive. She's doing it out of fear. She is very selfish because she needs him to accept her in order for her to feel like she's a valuable person. That's why she's doing all those things. Now, on the outside, other people may not see it. But motive matters. Motive matters. Another misbelief is I'm a valuable person if I meet certain standards. I'm going to go over this right quick because I know our time's just about up. I'm a valuable person if I meet certain standards. The idea of this is if this is where being a valuable person is, then I'm going to strive to meet those standards so that I can be valuable. This person seeks to do good to be good. They're seeking to do good to be good. Notice again, it's a selfish motive. The emotional response to that is the fear of failure. The fear of failure. People who have that misbelief have a fear of failure. Because if they don't meet that standard, if they fail at meeting that standard, then they're not going to be a valuable person. They're not going to be as likely to survive. And all they have to look forward to is just eternal darkness. Standardistic people have a lot of things in common. One is, even in our language, we use words like should, ought, and must. I should do this, I must do this, I ought to do this, because if I don't, I'm not okay. You should do this, you must do this, you ought to do this, because if you don't, you're not okay. We should do this, we must do this, we ought to do this, because if we don't, we're not okay. So again, there's that fear. And there's a lot of shoulds, oughts, and musts. There's a difference in saying I would prefer for things to be a certain way. I would prefer to be a certain way, you to be a certain way, us to be a certain way. But it's okay if we're not. I'm still valuable. But when we're standardistic, we think we have to meet those standards. And if we don't, then our life is not as good as it would have been if we would have met that standard. Standardistic people also always seem like something's missing. Something's missing. I don't know what it is, but once I meet that standard, whatever it is, I got to figure out what it is. You know, graduate from high school, all right, I did that, but something's missing. Go to college, get my degree, okay, I did that, but something's still missing. Get married, something's still missing. Have one child, something's still missing, so let's have another child. Maybe a couple more children, but something still is missing. Get a better job, bigger house, whatever. Something's missing. Achieve this. Accomplish that. Something's always missing. The reason is that no matter what we do, we can always do it better. No matter what we know, no matter what we have, we can always know more and have more. Whatever that standard is. We never do our best. No matter what we do, we can always do better. Always. So, we always feel like something's missing and we're just not there yet. We're not where we think we should be so that we can have that peace, so that we can feel like we're valuable. Standardistic people also tend to be more susceptible to addictions. Think about this. If I think that I have to meet a standard in order to be valuable, then every time I meet a standard that I set for myself, then I get a dopamine fix. I get a dopamine fix. Standardistic people tend to be checklist people. I'm going to meet my standard, and if I get everything done that I think I'm supposed to do, then I had a great day. If I don't get everything done on my list, then my day is not as good as it would have been. And actually, our mood can be affected by that, if we meet a standard or not. If we meet a standard and our mood is we become irritable and frustrated and angry and just moody, that's a good indication that there might be some addiction going on with whatever that is. Might be some addiction going on with that. So if I get everything done on my list, then I can feel good. If I don't, then I don't feel so good. And if you're the one that keeps me from getting everything done on my list, then I'm going to be really, really angry with you because you messed up my being able to get everything done on my list that I have to do in order to have that good feeling. So it's whatever. Whenever we meet those standards, we do get that dopamine fix, and that's why standardistic people tend to struggle more with addictions than people that are not standardistic. Again, Satan is the ruler of this world, and he promotes these lies about what standards that we need to make. I'm going to share just a few with you right quick. I know you're familiar with them, but he not only promotes these in the world, but it seeps into the church. That's really makes it difficult and hard. When people believe that a lie of Satan is really something that God teaches, and it's really messed up. The New Testament writers talked about it. One of these standards is the standard of looks. In our culture, in our society, if you're a beautiful person, then you're a valuable person. Beautiful people get more benefits in society than ugly people do, right? You know, beautiful people get, the jobs. They get to sit at the front of the class. The teachers like them. They get all the accolades and that kind of thing. Ugly people, it's like, no. So what Satan wants us to think is that if we are a beautiful person, then we're valuable. And what's interesting is that beauty is different from one culture to the next. But if I believe that my value is based on being accepted because I'm meeting the standards of beauty, then if I have a good hair day, then I'm going to feel really good. But if I have a bad hair day, then I'm not going to feel good. So our self-esteem is going to go up and down, up and down. It's going to be different. If my clothes are fitting me the way I want them to one day, then I feel good about myself. If they're not, then I feel bad about myself. People can actually become addicted to looking good. For example, you can go and you get cosmetic surgery. People become addicted to cosmetic surgery. Because every time they get something tweaked and somebody says, "Oh, you look so good," then they want to do it more and more because they want to get that dopamine fix. They want to feel good. And so it can become an addiction because it's rewarded like that. Same thing is true with buying clothes. "Oh, you look so good in that." "Oh, okay, well, let me go get something else and it'll make me feel good because people think I look good." And so it just kind of we become addicted to buying clothes to make us look good so we can feel good, and other people, especially when other people tell us about it. That became a problem in the first century church. A lot of women thought that how you look on the outside is reflecting on who you are on the inside, and so they would go to church and they would be really flashy and gaudy and trying to draw attention to themselves. Paul, whenever he wrote Timothy in 1 Timothy, said, tell the women to dress modestly. How you look on the outside has nothing to do with how you look on the inside. Our time is up. I hate that. Let me just summarize all of this, if I can. Those are the lies of Satan. And what research shows is that one of the reasons why children begin using drugs and alcohol is because they don't feel powerful enough on the inside. They feel powerless. They feel like they're a worthless human being. I saw this when I was working in the hospital setting. Parents that spoiled their children, that they thought that my job to be a good parent is I keep my children from hurting. That was their goal. It's bad to hurt. And so they just try to keep their children from hurting, and the children never learn how to grow up, and they don't know that they can be strong enough and deal with hardships and difficulties. That's one of the biggest factors today that's affecting, the snowflake culture that we have. Just a little bit of stress, a little bit of difficulty, and I've got to have my safe space. It's like, what? Oh yeah, I can't deal with this. It's not right. It's not fair. It hurts. It's bad to hurt people. If you love people, you're never going to do anything to hurt them. What? See, all of those lies of Satan. So I'd like to ask you to consider that if we were to die today, the only thing that matters, it's not going to matter what anybody else thinks about you. It's not going to matter how you look, what you have, what you've accomplished, how much education you have. It's not going to matter. The only thing that matters is that you know that God loves you and accepts you. So if you know that you are a child of God, that you are a divine being, you have divinity in you, God in you, Christ in you, and you don't rate yourself as a 10, then what that says is that you're allowing your old nature to still to define you. And that's one of the things that I was hoping that we could talk about. But our old nature, one of the things that keeps Christians from having a healthy self-esteem is they still let their old nature define who they are. It's a part of you. It's not you. You are a child of God. You are a child of God. You've put to death your old nature. It's still a part of you, but it's not you anymore. Don't let it define you. Look at yourself. If you were to rate your value on a scale of 1 to 10, if you are a child of God, you rate it as a 10. You don't get any more valuable than that in this world. But if you don't rate it as a 10, you're still using Satan's standards, or you're still letting your own nature still define you. Thank you so very much. I wish we had more time. Maybe we can talk about this some other time. But we have an awesome Father. I love Him so much because He has given us the words of life. They really are the words of life. They are words of life. It's supposed to be real. Christianity is not just playing church. A lot of people know a lot of facts about God, but they don't know God. They know a lot of Bible, but they don't know God. There's a difference. When we know God, our life is changing. And it's exciting. If you have anything you'd like to bring before our family, we're going to sing a song. Won't you please come as we sing the song selected.